Can you hold that? While I'm doing the intro? I'll hold it on you? Well, whoever's talking. This is a test. It's probably kind of hard to hear. We'll see what happens. It's a little blurry.
Which two? Are we talking about these two? My wish list. We're in the way? We'll go over there. Yeah, sure. They can wait. I'll meet you halfway. So, yeah, it sounds like we better take those.
Can you push the share button on there? And then Facebook. Yeah. Oh, do that.
Better?
And then send. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. How are you? Good to have you back.
Thank you once again, everybody, for being here. Tonight, we're having a fun interactive program. I can't wait to see what we're going to see here. I'm Eric. I'm the chairman of the Letterman Discussion Group. And first off, thank you to Mr. S, as always, for donating this space. We couldn't do that without them. So please spend your money. We have a new videographer tonight. David Schachter is doing video for us tonight. Thank you so much, David. In addition, for the first time, I'm doing a completely random experiment with Ustream. We're broadcasting live right now, and it's going to be on the Facebook group. So don't go like this into the camera if you don't want to be seen on that camera. Yeah, it's my phone. So I don't know how it's going to go. Give me feedback gently when you see the video later on.
Gently?
Yeah.
I wonder if I'm gently.
Thank you to David Ortman, who donated all of these chairs.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, he's a secretary here in San Francisco, and he's got flyers out on the table right out in front. So if you're in need of his services, go check that out. Let's see what else. Obviously, we've got some beverages and snacks just outside the door. There's one bathroom right there that sort of is closed and private. There's another more open one right outside the hall for those of you that have never been in the space before. Oh, wait. Toilet talk.
Really excited.
If you don't know how to get on our Facebook group, that's where a lot of the stuff and information and fun things are happening. So come find me, and we'll figure out how to get you on Facebook. Please, right now, turn off your cell phones, except for mine, because I'm going to be video broadcasting. Or at least turn the sound off so that it's not going to interrupt our guests who are so graciously here tonight. And until we do break, that is all I have to say. Thank you again. And here is Patrick, our director of the program.
Thank you. I'm delighted to cast a shadow on Robert and Carol. I'm delighted to have Robert Lawrence and Carol Queen with us tonight. And there are two archivists, docents, curators from the Center for Text and Culture 3.
Archivist, curator, and director of collection.
Marlene, Dorian, and Tess. I already forgot it. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. They have brought a lot of cool stuff, some of which you can already see. When I met Robert and Carol, that was about 6 years ago. I was in a strange leather education program called Journeyman 3. And, yeah, somebody knows all about it. And they showed up to do a class on fisting. Don't look at their hands now. And Robert and Carol started talking about their times in San Francisco with Janice, with the catacombs, they have an actual pew that was in the catacombs at the Center for Sex and Culture. And it made me cry. Because they knew everybody, they did everything, they did everybody. And so I'm really, really delighted to have you here and to talk about your baby, the Center for Sex and Culture, and yourselves, okay? I really don't want to cast a shadow on you, so
I really want a shadow because it's sort of glary and icy, so I can't keep all the cute boys over there.
I'll have to get up and go do that.
Okay. So, yes, now
some
it's
of
your
those
turn.
cute boys you've already cruised in the past.
Yes, Dr. Bitzer.
Yes, that is a name. It is not a steam name. Dr. Bitzer was a name given to me in a sling in the old catacombs. For those of you who don't know what the catacombs were, think of sort of a private club that you had to know somebody to get into or get near, that you got checked at the door before any of the public sort of venues and dungeons existed, before sex was actually consensual in the state of California. So it's in various places throughout town, owned by a man named Fred Hartman. And it's sort of like the secret dungeon you got to sneak into. And the first time I've been in, I was like trembling, like, ooh, I'm going to go to this place.
Gail Rubin called it the Temple of the Butthole, although that wasn't the only thing that went on there. It was very well known for fisting. And probably its most important cultural significance remains that it was a super important fisting club.
So how long have you each been in San Francisco? Since when?
1969 or 1970. I was, with all due respect to the cameras, kind of high, so I don't remember most of it.
Okay.
And then I joined the Army, and I got assigned to Presidio. In a combat engineer outfit that was...
You grew up here, you lived here, then you got assigned, then went to the Army and got assigned here.
Yeah, I grew up in the Central Valley over in Susan and Fairfield.
Yeah, but just hint, if you want to get assigned to the Presidio, you don't sign up here. You go to the Midwest to sign up, and you start shaking if they say they're going to send you to San Francisco, so then they do, and you're like, ha ha.
And what the guy told me was one of the last male units in the Army. And he said, you don't want to be the general's driver. You want to go to this unit. And I kept saying, no, he said, no, you want to go to this unit. And as I finally took him up on it, and I ended up being, it was at least about, I like to say a half, but I'm sure it was a third gay.
Oh.
That's before Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
So life in the Presidio. When did you come here?
I came here, well, I first came to San Francisco for a Pride parade in the late 70s, 77, 78. From Eugene, Oregon, which is where I was going to school and running the Gay Alliance and doing all the kind of stuff. Some of you are old enough to remember the Anita Bryant years. Of, Eugene was one of the cities that year that had, there were like 4 or 5 referenda in American cities that the Anita Bryant folks had put together, and Eugene lost its gay rights protection by a fucking hair. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault, I swear. I did my best. So I was here a year when hippie drag queens carried signs that said, U.S. out of San Francisco. I still sort of think that's a good sentiment in a way. And I moved here, lock, stock, and barrel in the mid-'80s. I was here in '86. So just about in time for all hell to be breaking loose. And began my PhD program at the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality, which was the supposed reason, well, it was a girl. But the other part of the reason that I came here when I did was to get my PhD in sexology, and I started doing that program in '87 when I met Dr. Wolf from the Jacks and many other folks. So, yeah.
But you went...
And you know...
You must have wound up with Good Vibrations pretty quick.
I was at Good Vibrations in 1990. And just before I got involved with Good Vibrations, I got involved with San Francisco Sex Information, which is kind of how I met this one. Actually, I met this one a little bit to the side of San Francisco Sex Information, and then we wound up...
You mean in the bathroom or what?
All these
and Robert found out that I had been helping out at the very, very first ever Jack and Jill off party, which was, basically what this was the Jacks. Y'all know the Jacks, right? Our friendly social masturbation group for men.
Well, tell us about, they started in the 80s.
They started out in 83.
Right.
78.
Ron Bluestein started in the late 70s.
Really?
Their official start date is later, but...
We have a lovely interview with Ron Bluestein. It's available on our website. It's not currently up.
Okay.
It's about the history of how the Jack started and what his intention was.
It's in the archives.
And Jill parties, obviously.
And there were a couple of women at the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality, which hereafter I'm going to call Sex School, because it's a little more abbreviated. And the place's acronym doesn't spell anything sexy or even interesting or even something you could pronounce. So, Sex School, a couple of women kept hitting up the Jacks like, just let us hide behind the drapes. Please, go hide behind the sofa. We just want to see the men jack off. And the men were like, but then finally, a couple of guys from the Jacks.
It's a complete negotiation for this to happen. Because even though they wanted to see, they wanted to be very clear. It's like, but we don't want anybody to come on us. And the men were like,
One of them loved to have had men come on her. I don't know about the other one, but one of them would be so down for that. But the fact is, what wound up happening was the men at the Jacks went, well, no, can't do that. But what we could do is we could work with them. We could support a different party where we could invite anyone to come along. So my very first official sex party of any kind, really, unless you count, the two dykes and their girlfriends and, Nepal and Eugene. That's not even, not nothing. with more than 4 people, was the first ever Jack and Jill off party with some men from the Jacks, these gals from the Institute. I had just gotten to the Institute, which is how I found out about it. They found a handful of swingers. I don't even know where they were from. Barry and Shells, probably, in the East Bay, which is still going strong in those days. Barry and Shells, some swingers. It was a swinger party house in Oakland, and had been going on since the mid-'70s. And then there were some people from various parts of the BDSM community. I'm not even sure what organizations, although I'm sure that Janice must have been in on it. And a whole bunch of people who would ordinarily not have met each other in a room jerking off. It all worked out great. And it was very much coded as a safer sex party strategy. Whereas the Jacks sometimes were okay being thought of that way. Really, they preceded the HIV epidemic, but the Jack and Jill offs really was supposed to be a safer sex strategy group event. That didn't include any fucking, at least not fucking with, human parts that we would think of fucking with. And that meant that anybody of any orientation, any gender, and any sort of erotic space interest could come together and theoretically find something to do.
and that's where we met. And oddly enough, if I may mention somebody's name, I was cruising the person who was holding the ladder, and the cruise sort of bounced and landed on Carol. It was Seth over here, of course. And we're holding a ladder, and Carol's up the ladder, and I'm watching Carol, and watching Seth, and we're flirting with each other, and we start saying limericks. And the limerick I said
I fell in love with Robert because of this limerick.
a truck driving lesbian
Lesbian
named
Spike
Spike hauls dildos at night down the pike. When asked by the fuzz what it was that she does, she said,
I'm a fake Dick Van Dyke. Awesome limerick. If it hadn't been for that, history might have been so good.
and that same night ended up in Herb Cain. A mention of something that we were doing that night, and the line was,
Please, sir, don't come in my hat. It's rented.
Actually, which is fine by me, but the hat was in the way, and it was rented, and I didn't want to have spooge stains on my hat, so Herb Cain said it was expensive.
You've come on it, you've bought it.
Somebody called Herb King and said, "Oh, I heard the funny thing at the sex party last
Somebody
night."
leaked it, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hurricane wasn't there.
No, sadly no. I bet he wished he had been. So that's how Robert and Annette.
And
I lost my license as a faggot, yes, I'm sorry.
yes, I'm going to wonder how that happens. Like, you were going to be a dyke driving around with your van.
Right.
And you were going to be Dr. Bitzer.
And I
So
was tricky with a bunch of...
obviously you took an unexpected detour.
Well, to catch up on the name, the Dr. Bitzer, I was in a sling in the catacombs, and this lovely man named Doug had his hand 3/4 of the way up my ass and his other hand coming in, the cigar in his hand, and I was huffing poppers because, I mean, back then we just sort of did these things. And there was a can of Crisco next to us, hung from a coat hanger that was sort of messy Crisco.
Sounds like a fire department situation to be in.
I think it was Fred was coming around refilling the can from a hot bucket because he just melted a whole lot and just spilled it.
We don't do that anymore. That's not done.
The catacombs closed down in 1984 on its own venue. It said, we can't do this. We know we're passing HIV. And so they willfully shut down. They were the second venue in San Francisco to shut down their own. We have more bad news in a minute. Fred says, I hear you're going to be a doctor. And I said, yes, I am. I think it was Fred. And Doug said, Dr. Bitch. And I said, Dr. Bitch? And he said, that's Dr. Bitch, sorry. And the room did that. And laughed. And I thought, oh, fuck, I've been named. So it isn't like I invented my fairy name. It's like, no, I was named in a dungeon with a hand in my ass.
The old guard way.
It sort of stuck.
Old school.
Now, I got my first leather shirt in 1967. I went to a guy called the Leatherman in Vacaville, California. Yeah, Cowtown.
The Leatherman? There was only one.
And
Vacaville,
he made a doeskin shirt for me lined with satin, and I took it home. And the first thing I did, of course, was turn it inside out, put it on, and took off. And I did that for a while until I sort of was able to wear it without having a hard on. But, you know, when you're 14, it sort of reflects it. I was then going to San Francisco off and on with my boyfriend. We were going to different bars on Polk Street. And one night I strayed down south of Market. And it was a cold night in San Francisco like it tends to be. And I was walking down the street and these two really dangerous-looking bikers came down the street. Black leather and boots and buckles and shit. And they were hairy and big. Because it was all long-haired hippie sort of stuff. And I thought, oh, fuck, I'm from the Central Valley. I don't want to deal with bikers. I really don't. And so I dumped down into a little step and I lit a cigarette, and I'm sitting there just paying no attention to anybody, being invisible. And I walked past, and one of them said, and then you take a tomato and you put it on a fork and turn it over. What? I'm home.
So, Carol, one of your most famous or notorious published works is called The Leather Daddy and the Femme.
Right.
So, did that have any, perchance, real life inspiration?
Well, people think it's my autobiography. Sadly, no. I actually had a job that whole time, and I had to go to work and stuff. I couldn't just fuck all the time like it's in that book.
And she wasn't thrown into the trunk. It was a 66 Cadillac. We tied her, threw her over the back of the front seat with her ass out and spanked her across the bridge.
Well, yeah, I think that might have happened. But basically, The Leather Daddy and the Femme was my most politically incorrect, inappropriate dyke fantasy from back when I was a pup.
Oh, so you wrote that before you met him?
No. But I was long the kind of inappropriate dyke who I did inappropriate dyke things like you're supposed to do, but then I did extra inappropriate dyke things, which in the old days there was no real knowledge base of support for, which was that I would borrow my gay boyfriend's porn.
Oh, yeah.
So I collected on gay porn in the 70s and 80s. By the time I was into college, I was well into it. And
you were not being tortured by the Dworkin and McKinnon types?
Oh, they were irritating. There was a moment, only a tiny little moment when I was anti-porn. This was in the 70s. But then I realized that the stuff that I was borrowing from my boyfriends and jerking off to was indeed porn also. And that it actually wasn't really very fair of me to say that it wasn't okay for people to see women in porn, and if it was going to be okay for me to see men in porn, and it just, I backed off from the politics of that rather rapidly. Also, I was one of the 3 women in Eugene's across the picket line of our other friends to see Story of O when the movie came out in the late 70s. Cross the picket line. The other 2 people were my girlfriends, and I made them cross the picket line. So we all sat there and watched the Story of O with a whole bunch of other people who had no idea that it was politicized. They didn't know. And so when I got to San Francisco, it was just the very moment when the zine revolution began to happen. And some of you have been around long enough to remember, before the internet, before websites, before all of that, we had our own self-published zines, or small magazines. And I started writing the Leather Daddy and the Femme for those entities, and for the first several chapters of it, it was just basically one-off stories, but that had the same characters. A cross-dressing, bisexual femme named Miranda, and when I say femme and cross-dressing, I mean that when she cross-dressed, she looked like chicken. And it was hard for her to find any men for more than a second, because as soon as they said, oh, there's a cute little boy who's interested in me, wait a minute, that's a girl. So then they would throw her out of bed right away. Until chapter 1 of this book, when the Leatherman did not throw her out of bed, and they went ahead and had a fine time. And then a whole bunch of other stuff happened, because you can't find one Leatherman all by himself. He's always got some other boyfriends, and they maybe know some dominatrixes, and you know how it is in real life. So it's a community of people identified around their sexuality who are having adventures in this novel. And while Robert is part of the inspiration for the Leatherman in the book, Jack Random, yes. Another Jack, who is a dear friend of ours who died a year or so ago, that other Jack was also in there a little bit, and our old friend Stephen Brown is one of the Leatherman inspirations. And one of the women, other women characters in the book, is a mashup of a dominatrix from here and a dominatrix from Toronto. And I mashed them together, and I went, if I could make those 2 dominatrixes and mash them together, what kind of dominatrix would they be? And so Mistress Georgia Strong is that person, for those of you who want it.
And the only thing really made up in the entire book is the chapter with a chihuahua in it.
Well, I and/or Robert and/or people that we knew all did all the stuff in the book, except for the chihuahua fucking the guy's urethra, and that was me. Oh. We would want a bigger dog to do that.
I just got an idea for another program. So, you told me I could ask you anything.
Yeah.
So, how did you turn the corner, Dr. Bitzer?
I split.
Tell us how it did.
Okay,
tie you up and pull your pants off? Or?
No, I don't do tie me up and pants off.
Oh, once in a while you do.
She put me in drag and tied me up and pulled my pants off.
That'll do it every time.
There was
drag runs in Robert's family. His grandfather did drag.
My grandfather was a professional drag performer in Texas in the 1940s and 1950s.
Wow.
So I come from a performance background. Clothes are clothes. The idea that a gender owns a particular thing is kind of beyond to me a long time ago.
Robert would say, those aren't women's clothes. They're mine.
And at the time, I was living in something of a professional household as a kept man, because at one point in my life I was operating pretty often as a sex worker. So I was doing adult audio tape. That's how old I am. Can you imagine? That thing, you
That's
put
kind
a
of old.
microphone into it.
Yeah.
But not 8-track. You're not that old.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I was reading stores for people to buy these tapes for $7 a piece and jerk off to before the internet.
Hello, let me tell you a story.
And I was in
How did you market them? By mail?
There was a company that paid me to do this. I was also an adult. I was also a gay adult cards back in the 70s in San Francisco as a model. Yeah, once your waist goes over like 29 inches, you lose the job. You got to be tiny and twinky and no zips. And
no bear modeling quite yet. That would come soon, but it wasn't quite that moment yet.
So, what was your inspiration for the center? I mean, what led you to that?
Our life. We drove around the country. There was nobody doing this, and in the 90s, we got in Carol's little beat-up Audi that had one windshield wiper and no heater, and we drove all around the country. And we went any place that would have bars in small towns. We would go any place to do sex education, talk about SM and leather and stuff. And we went, you name the fucking shithole bar place around the nation that's got queer on it, and we went to that place and did something.
Shithole?
Yeah, well, okay. How about the Eagle in Exile?
I prefer to call them insufficiently supported.
How about the Eagle?
The Eagle in Exile, you could see through the walls out to the parking lot with little gravel. It's true.
Columbus, Ohio, you could see through the clapboard walls through the snow that was falling.
And you could lift up the toilet and set it aside in case you wanted to play
the
with
toilet
it.
had glory holes at top height and at face height, and the toilet was too far away from the glory holes, so they literally didn't bolt it down. You could pick it up on this flex line and move it over to get in the glory hole, and then you could make boys lick the hole in the ground. They got skank figured out. This was the place where I did it.
In Columbus?
You know, you take all the small towns in the nation and all the perverse people and interesting people and sexy fun people in small towns and compress them and put them in one place. There's so many more than all the big cities to put together. It's just amazing how many fun people are out there.
The trick when you're on your road trip is to find them.
So we drove around the nation for about 10 years doing that.
This is a road movie, not a censor.
Yeah, and we got to Betty Dodson's place one time, and she said, you know, you kids, I was 45 at the time, you kids need to have a place. And it needs to be a place where people, what you're doing, can go to. Now, the road we cut around the nation was followed by a bunch of people going to lesbian bookstores and gay bookstores and gay bars and queer bars and the venues. We cut that road for sex education. And as we got followed, Betty said, you guys need to have a place.
And Betty Dodson is, some of you know her name probably, but some of you may not have heard of her. She's sometimes called the mother of masturbation. She's the one single individual person who helped make female masturbation a feminist thing to do in the 70s and 80s, and has been speaking on behalf of masturbation her entire life. She's in her 80s now. Yeah, and she really assigned us this task.
If you've used a Hitachi, it's because of her.
And what year was this that Betty made you that suggestion?
Betty said this in 1994, and it took us the next 6 years or so, and we talked about it. We were already doing a play party series, which was a sort of an after the Jack and Jill offs faded away. We did Queen of Heaven, which was a pansexual, a pansexual play party series that was all safer sex, but that other than that, there were no boundaries about what we all did, and so anybody with any set of sexual interests could come. And then the fun was trying to figure out how they would all talk to each other, because it wasn't just we all know we're together. Like no, it could be anyone. So a lot of people got their first experiences at a lot of different times there.
The Queen of Heaven structure was very successful as seeing as how we were the only game in town.
For a minute there, yeah.
And our final successful location was the place on 14th Street. I'm not going to mention it online where it is, but the Magic House there. And we operated there for a couple of years, and then we loaned our mailing list to Bill Grant, and Bill Grant using our mailing list. We tuned down from what we were doing. And I'm going to say something now that I've mentioned his name, so it's going to be just a downer moment here. For those of you who knew Bill Grant, if you don't know, Bill passed us last week. So if you could just hold a moment of silence. Goodbye, Bill. Bill was remarkable in what he did. He was a leader in this community. He was a boy that will be missed.
And we're trying to find out if there's a memorial service that is being planned for him by BLW or any of his other friends and associates, and if nobody's going to do one, we're going to do one at the center. So some of you will have signed up on our e-list when you came in. If you didn't sign up and you'd be interested in knowing about that, please let us know, or sign up on the e-list on the way out, because we'll put it on the list in the next week or
You
so.
can find it in Facebook right now, too.
I think if we do it, I think it will probably be a week from Saturday, but don't quote me for sure on that.
Well, Dorian, post it to our group, okay?
Sure.
Great.
So the structure that we used in running small venues and doing lectures and that sort of stuff, we kept doing after Betty told us what to do, and we talked to people about what we were going to do, what we were going to name it. And so we effectively were operating it from about 94 or 95. And in 2000 we incorporated Incorporated got our first venue.
Actually, in 1999, a friend of ours said, "Damn it, I'm sick and tired of hearing you people saying you're going to start this thing. I'm going to write you a check right now. I want you to take it to an attorney and get your 501c3 status and get going."
See, it's fun to have
We're
strings
like,
to a
"Thank
trick,
you."
because one of my tricks came forward and said, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. So thanks to him, he wants to remain anonymous, so we thank him very much for his original faith in us. And we did reach out to a queer attorney and say, we want to do this thing. And I was answering all of the IRS's questions, chapter and verse, and she was like, listen, one line, just say one line. You can't tell them all this. Just one line. Really what we paid her for was to edit my paragraph. And sexologically speaking, we need to have everyone come together because blah, 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 blah. And she's like, no, don't say anything sexologically speaking. Just say it's sex education, and that's all.
It did come to a head at one moment when the IRS asked us this one question. After we'd answered, we do sex education. The return question was, what do you really do? We do sex education.
We're like, IRS, did you get enough sex education?
Was Janet Hardy's husband, Edward, was working on those parties with you?
Edward was part of some of the... Actually, Edward had a whole separate organization that we sometimes collaborated with.
Oh, okay.
Edward formed Links, which is an organization that was supposed to be inter-organizational and worked very well for that. It operated out of 2 locations, the 14th Street House, various locations. But Edward's purpose was to do SM education, particularly for the intercommunity structure. And it was a very successful event. There were other events like that we all cooperated on that were going on in town at the same time as we grew. What actually happened was in 1976, Willie Brown and
John Burton?
Phil
Burton.
Changed the law in the state of California and made it legal for adults to have sex with each other, and out of that grew all these things that have happened.
So what do you mean to person? Because the consenting adult law had not yet been passed in California until that time. Many people think that the consenting adult laws in California are much older, but they're really rather recent.
So we were operating out of our house. We had a collection of books, about 3,000 of them in the hallway, and we were going to move the books into the venue. And we have moved books into the venue, but the 3,000 in the hallway are still there. We have 15,000 books now.
In your house?
In our house. Yeah. We have 15,000 books, 5,000 are on the walls, and another 10,000 are in stores. We have probably the only library that's a public research library structure available in the United States for sex in all general categories of human sexuality, available for the public to walk into and do research in. We currently have researchers working in the location from various places around the world and the nation.
But you have, I know that you've been chased from place to place by landlords who discovered what you did and didn't want you there anymore.
Yeah, I learned the lesson: never ever get a landlord who is like doesn't have anybody in the building and is eager to have you.
Because that means he wants to sexually harass your intern.
Yeah, it was a nice location, a place out of control.
Was that one?
That was one of those places.
Okay.
Another one, there was a little problem with meth. Another one, there was...
We were the last people standing at 1519 Mission Street, the John Sims Center. We were the last queer organization there. The lease that we got was leased through somebody who decided that the best thing to do in life was to get involved with methamphetamine. I'm not going to mention any names; it would be rude because it's a disease.
Sorry, I asked about that.
And
but it's part of our community's history as well.
So we've taken some of the John Sims Center stuff with us, the concepts, the structure, the people, and so we've moved it down the street to 1349 Mission Street.
So if any of you hadn't visited us there at the John Sims Center up the long flight of stairs, we're just a block away now, block and a half away. And on the ground floor! We're on the ground floor.
No stairs, and it's on Mission between 10th
Between
and
9th and 10th, right at Grace Alley.
Yeah.
And across from the St. James Infirmary, and across from Counterpulse, so we have a little group of like-minded community around us. Some of the Queen of Heaven parties and other events that we did in the early 90s were held at the predecessor organization to Counterpulse, which was called 848 Community Space. Some of you may remember that place and have been to Perverts Put Out readings or other things that happened there. And we used to have play parties and educational events and cultural events and stuff there. So in a way, part of the answer to your question, Patrick, is that we were practicing in somebody else's venue all the way back to the early 90s to have what is essentially a multi-purpose venue. On one side of the room, it's gallery. On the other side, it's library. In the back and upstairs, it's archive.
And the floor is loop-proof, so.
Yeah.
And
Not that you
have
couldn't
We
slip.
have hosted play parties.
We have hosted play parties.
Many.
Other people have come in to do play parties there. We've had sex events that were educational but live action. So, you
The
know,
Masturbate-a-thon.
that is very educational. Like if someone has not seen a lot of people masturbating all around them ever before. We have the Masturbate-a-thon every year. We also do sort of ordinary-ish sex ed classes. This coming weekend, we're going to do an amazing, I don't know if this is any of you, for any of you, but we're having an amazing set of 4 classes on sex-positive parenting. So if any of you have any kids at home that are not your boy or girl kids, you've been wondering when to break the news. And next month, we're going to have in our gallery, Tough Love. Jordy Jones is curating homoerotic art, male art, for our art show, so that it's all fulsome-y. And not only that, Perverts Put Out is there on a quarterly basis. Our next one, I think, is going to be in October. We usually do a Folsom Eve Perverts Put Out, but this time we are not. And the reason we're not is because the Carter Johnson Library is coming to the Center for Sex and Culture. And the Carter Johnson Library is the largest privately held collection, or probably any collection anywhere, of BDSM-related and kink-related materials, both books and periodicals, and also archival, sort of personal papers types of things. Something like the collection that we already have at the center, except the center's is not only leather and kink-related, it's across the board in the sexuality community, whereas the Carter Johnson Library is more focused. And it usually lives with Vi, on the eastern seaboard somewhere. Vi is coming along, and they're going to put it in a truck. They're going to drive it all the way across the country, wave at all the people in the cornfields, and then pull up at the Center for Sex and Culture, take it out, and you can look around and see all of this amazing stuff all through Folsom Week. So almost every evening there will be an event.
Is Jill coming too?
Pardon me?
Is Jill coming too?
I don't know if Jill's coming or not. I haven't actually heard
She
it.
doesn't usually go with the library.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but I do know that Vi's coming, and my understanding is that there will be day availability to just browse the collection pretty much every single day, including Folsom Day. Almost every night there will be some sort of an event, except Monday night is when the Jacks are they always have, the Jacks are always with us. And by saying that, I don't mean that we don't clean up after the Jacks are there. Of course we do. But one of the reasons that we have been chased around the town wasn't just the intern problem and the meth problem. Another one was that the people in the building that we had rented a space freaked out when they found out the Jacks were there, and we got a big deal.
Oh my God, there's a heart on in the next room.
I remember that. That was the one. That was when I met you.
Yeah.
You can say that in any building in the nation.
I have to tell you.
So how would you characterize the difference between what you're doing and what the Leather Archives and Museum do?
If I may, I would like to refer that to the people who most recently visited Leather Archives, who would be our Director of Collections and our Curator.
You want to say?
You're on.
Yay!
Dorian.
What's the best way to describe the difference between what we do and what the Leather Archives does?
Yeah.
The Leather Archives is interested in leather community history. I mean, they're a little bit broader than that, but I think that's the best way to sum it up. We are interested in sexuality history, and the best example I can give is if somebody wants to donate all of their collected stuff over their life to us, or donate it to the Leather Archives. The Leather Archives is interested in things that are directly leather related. They're interested in bar vests. They're interested in stuff directly attached to leather organizations. And we feel that it's more appropriate for our mission to keep a broader range of materials. So we'll have the bar vest, and we'll have the papers from the leather organization, But we'll also have letters to mom and childhood photographs, and try and capture a more whole image of what this person's life was like.
Great.
Um,
And you have a lot more San Francisco stuff, probably.
Yeah, and also we have a lot more stuff that isn't leather but is sexologically significant.
Right.
The Leather Archives is not collecting Golden Age straight porn movie posters. We have an enormous collection of things.
Oh, I know something else they're not going to. Just before we show this wonderful stuff, I happened to be talking on the way over to a mutual acquaintance, Guy Baldwin, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, and I told him, this is LBG night, and who's coming? So, you and Robert, and he said, "Ask her how many dildos she has in her collection." And I don't know that the LA&M collects as many of those as you have.
I don't know that they do either. Plus, I just want to say, if you had told me when I was a little baby dyke that Guy Baldwin would wonder how many dildos I have.
Not only do we collect dildos, we actively seek them. Right now, there's a rumor that there is a very famous gay man, and I mean like internationally famous gay man, that there was a movie made about most recently, whose name I cannot mention, because it might queer the deal, dildo collection out there somewhere being held by somebody. And our director of collections and our curator are actively teasing with the person who's been hanging on to these dildos that belong to this man who at one point worked at City Hall. So dildos, no, we all know his name. Say it that way. And if we get that collection, it will make, it's one of those, that guy. It'll make international news if we get this dildo collection.
Well, if we announced it, we got a dildo.
Yes. There are things we collect that we don't announce for. We have collections of stuff with people's names. We just don't talk about it. It would be rude to bring their name into it. So we have collections we've been told we can't use names, and collections we can use names. May I just go into collections here?
Sure, but I still want to answer. How many?
I would say there are at least a couple of dozen dildos in the archives. Would you say more than that, Marlene?
I would say there would be more than that if it weren't for the fact that rubber, particularly rubber that has been exposed to oily substances, does not hold up well over the years.
There have been certain things that we were not able to maintain, sadly. And on top
But they
of
were photographed before they met.
on top of the dildos, we also have a collection of antique vibrators, much like the vibrators that you can see at the Antique Vibrator Museum at Good Vibrations, but a whole other 100 or 150 of them that we hold that aren't the same collection at all. So
the guy has it inside out. I'm the one with all the dildos.
well, that's Robert's personal collection is probably larger than the center's official collection. But they will all go to the center someday, including the very largest silicone dildo ever made, to our knowledge.
At one point, it was the world's largest silicone dildo, but it's a long time ago. Downstairs, they have those 5-pound coffee can ones that are taped like trees.
Oh, yeah.
Square peg.
Those didn't used to be made of silicone, but
Do
now.
you want to tease us a little before we break with some of this great stuff that you brought?
Let's say a little bit about what's here. Robert, do you want to start just sort of picking things up and talking about this?
Let's
and
just ask you
I'll add
some
on?
questions. What if somebody called you one day and said, "Hey, I have all Larry Townsend stuff over across the bay in my basement, and I want to give it to you. You think you want it?"
Yeah.
What if when you opened it up, it had thousands of pieces of hand-drawn art by the artists?
Oh.
Yeah. There's so much you get numb watching it.
Because Larry Townsend was the editor of Drummer for quite some time.
Star Magazine. And
Right.
we have the collection at the center, and there's your teaser. You can close that now.
I'm letting the,
What if
I'm letting the interwebs take a
what
good
if
look at
Spectator
it.
magazine said, hey, we want to donate all your stuff, and by the way, we were early leather folk in the mid-early 70s, and we have been taking pictures of all the leather events like the 1990 Leather Weekend in Guernsey.
That's another fine.
So we have thousands of these.
And we've got some women in the room who might want to see this fine duo.
All
So-
right.
And some of you may not even remember that Spectator magazine was the adult newspaper that you could buy for $4 at newspaper boxes all around the Bay Area. And people thought of it as a sort of a straight stripper girl picture magazine, but it was far, far more than that. And Lane and Kat, who were the original editors of Spectator, were among the first people to teach BDSM classes in the community. They were Mistress Cat and Mouse. Lane went by Mouse, and they started doing that in the late 70s, not long after they acquired the Spectator from the Berkeley Barb, the 1960s and 70s era hippie and radical newspaper that the middle section turned out to really be the only popular part of the newspaper they came in the 70s. And after a while, people didn't care about where the demonstrations were going to be anymore, but they did care about the sex part, so that turned into Spectator magazine, which is a little known fun fact.
And there's your teaser for the moment.
Well, we're going to ask you, can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
Did you get all the stuff from QSM before it closed?
No, we did not get all the stuff from QSM. I'm not sure where that went.
Karen?
What's QSM?
QSM is, for a long time, when I first came to town, it was one of the few places that offered classes.
Right.
And it's a little house, sort of nondescript on the corner of, maybe I shouldn't say. Yeah,
It was in Noe Valley
it's
somewhere.
in Noe Valley. And,
Where you wouldn't think it would be. It was there it is.
and the lady who ran it was named Karen, and she was very eccentric, as you might expect, and she was in a motorized wheelchair a lot, and she had a collection of bells, and you would go to a class that Midori would be giving, or somebody, but it couldn't start until Karen picked up the bell that was going to start the class, and she would ring it, and then you would have your class, and she was so hospitable that if you needed to go to the bathroom, you went to Karen's bedroom and used her bathroom and saw her unmade bed. And she had a huge collection of dirty magazines and dirty books.
She sold books and magazines for quite some time and did mail order. Yeah, QSM stood for Quality SM.
They were listed in Dun and Bradstreet.
Amazingly enough. Yeah, they were. She was.
The business.
She was.
I used to see her up at the Safeway now and then, but now
Storefront. Because she was too close to a school. Yeah.
She had to close down for that reason. Isn't that a shame?
Oh, is that what?
Because she was near a school.
She was near a school.
Is she still doing okay? 2 years ago. Well, thanks. I'm glad I-
Yeah, no. And let me just make sort of one closing statement before we have to have our break, because I think it's a good introduction to the next part. There's a way in which what we acquire is a little bit random, because we don't, we're not offered everything. We don't know about all of the interesting collections that there are. Sometimes there's a collection that's available, but that people want to sell it, of course. People have acquired things their whole life. They have rare porn or whatever, and they want to make a little money out of it. And we don't have a budget for that, at least not at this time. But the things, we were talking about this over dinner, the things that are really, really interesting about our collection are the things that we don't get, the things that we never know about, the things that someone goes into a room and says, "What the fuck? Grandpa had this," and they take it out back and burn it. The reason that this is important to maintain is that nobody mindfully, for the entire culture, the overarching diverse sexual culture, wants to save our history for us. We all know that we live in a sexualized nation that is not very comfortable about sexuality.
How many of us have the agreement? Excuse me, when I pass, let's just go into my garage up on the rafters. Give me a note now. How many of us have the agreement? We got 2-3 brave people here who made the agreement.
And
how many of us know that if somebody found out about who we really were, it would ruin somebody else's life, their family, people who are not out, people who have a collection that's really juicy or interesting or very revealing. And they either make the agreement or the family comes in to somebody's estate and they go, okay, and they shake hands. You want to find porn? Go to the dump. I'm fucking serious.
We should send our interns out to the dump. What a good idea.
They just drive into the dump where they drop off a load, so to speak, and look around the edges of the wall. So the magazines are stacked. Where the guys are going, I'll take those. Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And I was just telling Patrick at dinner too that there was one moment when we were sitting Saturday morning, we were sitting at home and the cell phone rings. It's the center cell phone, and I hear Robert say, I'm not going to tell you this whole long Shaggy Dog story. I'm just going to tell you this part.
I'll tell you the story.
Well, that's great. People may need to see. He said, why, yes, of course we take collections. We'd be happy to give you a tax letter for it. How many boxes would you say there were? Wait, is that all you destroyed? Please don't destroy anything else.
You can't shock us.
And
you can surprise us.
Somebody across town had the fire going out back and was feeding pages and freaked her out into the can. And we said, stop doing that. We'll take it. It's valuable.
And you're going to have
Scholars
to wait
will
until
want to see
after
it
break
someday.
to find out what this collection is. It's really tasty.
Right after you tell me who the owner of those boots are. Was.
These boots belong to Larry Townsend, and we actually have a special thing going on right now. We have 2 pairs of boots from Larry Townsend. One we are going to keep as is, and one we are selling chances to polish. If anyone is interested in buying a ticket as a possible chance to polish Larry Townsend's boots, they're $5 per ticket. Marlene, our Director of Collections, will be happy to talk to you. And we're going to draw the ticket the night of Folsom Fair Eve, so that on Folsom Fair Day, someone will know that they can come over and polish the boots or make arrangements to do it at some other time after that.
And we have 2 pair of boots, but one of them has a spooge spot on it, and I'm not going to make
No,
that
we're
go
keeping
away.
them.